Welcome back to Building a Better Britain. My name's Umar Hanif, and this week has certainly been one for the media. We've seen President Zelensky fly out to the US and the UK with somewhat of a bust-up with the US President and Vice President. We've seen UK and European allies looking at a shift away from the US, and we've seen Trump alienate just about every single friend that the US has had on an international stage. So in this episode, we're going to look at the potential ramifications of their behaviour in the Oval Office last week. There's absolutely no doubt that the US has been, for many decades now, certainly since the Second World War, the largest military superpower in the world. There's no doubt about that. But the reason that they are so influential and that they are so strong isn't just about how much money that they invest into their military, which is substantially more than any other country. There's no doubt about that. But it's their relationships with countries throughout the world. It's their military bases throughout the world. It's the fact that they can reach any part of our planet through their diplomatic relations, their military bases, and relationships like NATO, for example, that allow them to hit places like the Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan, defend places like Ukraine against aggressors like Russia much quicker than they could from their mainland in the US, because they've got bases across the world. And importantly, their European counterparts and counterparts elsewhere in the world have contributed significantly. So the UK and Europe alone have contributed £54 billion alone in the last 12 months on military contributions towards NATO. And that's not to be underestimated. So when President Trump makes comments, or certainly JD Vance in the last day or so, comments that have been scathing, insinuating that the likes of the UK and France are insignificant with 20,000 troops in Ukraine, is not just disrespectful, it's also incorrect. Because without the aid and help and support of countries like Germany, France, the UK and other European allies, wars that the US started in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places around the world couldn't have been won and couldn't have been as effective as they were without the support of their European counterparts. We've also seen tariffs being imposed on Mexico and Canada, which makes no fiscal sense whatsoever to me, because these two countries not only share two of the largest land borders with the US, they also share major trading routes as well. Not just from an economic perspective, but there's major US corporations that sell and manufacture in both those countries, and the supply chains are going to be significantly disrupted as a direct result. And now we've seen Mexico and more recently Canada imposing tariffs the other way as well, with the leaders of states like or provinces like Ontario removing US goods from shelves completely. And that to me is damaging businesses within the US. It's creating significant challenges for businesses that depend on revenue from these countries. So whilst Trump has, certainly asserted himself to, if we could even use that word, in the last 6 to 7 weeks since he's been president, he's also created a lot of unrest and unnecessary challenges that the US people didn't need. So who are the winners in this decisive and quite nasty trade war and exchange of words? Well, really, the behaviour of both the President and Vice President of the United States is resulting in a lot of divide, and it's resulting in the UK and Europe looking elsewhere for military, looking elsewhere for trade routes, looking elsewhere for partners. And if anything, I've seen strength amongst the European Union and its allies in the last week to 10 days. And we've also seen winners in terms of Russia and China now potentially asserting their dominance on the global military stage. Certainly China, who have increased their military budget in the last 25 years by over 220%. they are now fast catching America. And the issue we've got is, whilst everybody's turning away from the US as a result of their behaviour, the US's military dominance is actually going to be declining significantly at a rapid rate, whilst China and the European Union and other partners will be increasing at a rapid rate as well. So the real losers in this are indeed the US, but whether the president sees it that way or not is another story. Countries, governments, investors, large-scale organisations have often seen the US as a stable trading partner, a stable country, a stable government who, is a safe bet for trade, for military, for all manner of things. But the government's rash behaviour and erratic diplomatic decisions, really, in the last month or two, has now led to organisations and countries right across the world question not just their loyalty, but actually whether the US can be a trusted partner for them. And quite frankly, having spent 6 years as a senior government advisor to the UK government, if I was back in that post now, I would be advising the UK government to do everything they could to move away from the US. Major European partners, United Kingdom, France, Italy, Germany, these were all countries who heavily invested in the conflicts that the US had in Afghanistan over the last 20 years or so. Iraq as well in that time. And thousands of troops, tens of thousands of troops from those countries were deployed, and thousands were killed. So for J.D. Vance to make comments like the UK and France are insignificant, that the military power is insignificant, or even insinuate that European partners have significance in military power or in any other matter for that regard, isn't just disrespectful to the lives that were lost. It's also disrespectful for the decades that we have stood by the US, for the military bases that we've allowed in our countries, and for the sheer investment in the tens of billions that we've made to support the US in all of their conflicts, irrespective of whether we believe they were the right things to do or not. So those comments were not only scathing, but they were damaging by the Vice President. A Vice President who is new to the global stage, who is new to diplomatic relations, and quite frankly has disgraced the US and the US government on a global stage. Thank you for listening, and whilst this has been a rather controversial episode, we're going to keep you up to date on all things political, economic and military coming out of the global sphere at the minute, but particularly the US. Thank you.